A baby of 6 months, fostered by a loving mother.
Food, you want food?
He learned to talk and grew up fast.
Chantek was like everybody else, just maybe a little hairier.
But he ran into trouble.
I'm in this cognitive battle with this orangutan and I'm losing.
Now in middle age, can America's best educated orangutan finally learn who he really is?
He told us he was an orangutan person.
An animal born to be wild. The rarest of bonds with a human. A friendship across the divide. A story of unbreakable devotion.
My Wild Affair was made possible in part by contributions to your PBS station from viewers like you. Thank you.
On this little campus in the late 1970s, a project was born that questions what it means to be human. It was the idea of Dr. Lynn Miles. It began with a student assignment, teaching chimpanzees to communicate in sign language.
I was blown away. I knew that this would be a life's work.
That led to a job offer that would change her life.
I got a phone call from Chattanooga, Tennessee, which I had really hardly ever heard of, and I saw that it was very close to Atlanta, where I knew there were primate studies going on, and I thought, sounds good to me, why not try Chattanooga?
In 1978, Lynn arrived on campus with a plan to expand the frontiers of ape communication.
I was so excited as a graduate student that I could start my own project with a different species that no one had explored yet.
Her break came with the arrival of a baby orangutan at Yerkes Primate Facility near Atlanta, where apes are bred for scientific research.
His name was Chantek, which sounded like a robot to me, kind of science fiction, futuristic. The first time I picked Chantek up in my arms, I could see how tiny and how fragile he was. There was a part of me that just wanted to know what could be in the mind of a non-human. Just imagine waking up and talking to an ET.
Taken from the research lab at 9 months, Chantek was given to Lynn on short-term loan.
It was the greatest gift that a scientist can get at the beginning of their career.
Her plan was to teach Chantek to communicate with sign language by placing him in a radical experiment. She would raise him on the campus, as if he were human.
It was extremely exciting for the campus up there to have that animal around.
Lynn's hunch was that if Chantek grew up in a human setting, he would become more like us.
We had to create a home for Chantek. There was an old trailer right next to our music building. We got some toys and puppets. I wanted to raise him as if he were a human child. The reason for this is you can't do a proper study of how human-like he might be if we didn't provide human cultural setting. When Chantek would crawl across the floor, his hands and legs would be spread out in a really strange way. We called it his spider walk. Bedtimes were particularly lovely because we would play shadow puppets with our hands as the sun was setting. And he would just lie in my arms and fall asleep. It was magical.
The 1970s was an age of new frontiers. Chimps had already led the way into space.
Is there in this vast uncharted universe some creature superior to man? A planet of the apes?
And exploring our similarity to apes fitted with the radical ideas of the time.
Perhaps in other worlds, man is not the highest order of living things. It supposes the existence of a society in which the ape is the superior form of life.
Around the same time that we first walked on the moon, we began to communicate with great apes. We had already conducted studies with chimpanzees, and we had begun studying the language ability of gorillas.
Who is that? Think me there. Okay, that is you.
There were plans in the works to start computer lexicograms to talk to bonobos. That left one species.
Orangutans had not been studied much. It was the neglected ape. I had no doubts, because what I knew about them, that they were highly intelligent, certainly capable of doing something like Coco the gorilla or any of the chimps that had been studied up to that point.
Please have Coco love that. Candy, yes.
During that period, these signing studies were seen as revolutionary, and everybody wanted to get involved in it.
I felt privileged to be the fourth researcher to try the fourth species of great ape.
Dr. Lynn Miles is one of a select group of scientists who are interested in talking with apes, and her reasons for wanting to are intriguing.
We talk with apes. We know they have feelings. We know they have ideas. They are obviously not human beings. They're different. But in our world, lots of life forms have abilities that we think are worth recognizing. So the possibility, the even likelihood that there is intelligent life elsewhere in the universe interests us as well.
Lynn's deal with the university gave her Chantec on a 2-year loan. Beyond that, his future was uncertain.
There are more than 7,000 students at the University of Tennessee in Chattanooga. They come from all walks of life, in all shapes and sizes, from all over the country. But there probably has never been a more unusual student to hit the campus than the one that we're going to meet tonight. When he's full grown, he could weigh more than 200 pounds and be 10 times as strong as a man. Dr. Miles says she'd like to continue working with Chantec as long as his size doesn't become a problem.
Already, Chantec's orangutan nature presented a big challenge.
Chantec was pretty capable of climbing around in his enclosure, holding on to wires. He would navigate along the walls.
This was no ordinary baby.
He had 2 sets of hands, so he would cling to me with his hands and his feet. I might move his hands, his feet are attached. I'd move his feet, his hands would be attached. And his favorite toy was the ordinary vacuum cleaner, and he loved to have us vacuum his hair. Sometimes we felt a little like servants.
Surrounded by our culture, the hope was that Chantec would acquire our language.
Dr. Miles is confident she can teach Chantec to communicate, and communicate well. What will be some of the first things you'll teach him?
Well, the first thing we need to do is to teach him the rules of communication. He has to learn to pay attention, to take turns, and we will teach him the signs by actually molding his hand into the shape of the sign.
Curious about Chantec's mental ability, Lynn put him through a series of tests.
Where? Good.
But truly to know Chantec's mind, Lynn needed him to talk.
After about a month of living with Chantec, I was holding him in my arms and I was feeding him some baby food, and I was molding his hand into the sign for food. and giving him something to eat, associating the sign, giving him something to eat. And then suddenly he lifted his own hand and he went like this. It was very awkward.
Food, you want food?
And I gave him something and I thought, well, maybe that's just a random gesture. And then he lifted his hand again. I gave him something to eat. And then he began hitting his chin with his splayed out fingers. And I realized he got it. He understood. It was really, really exciting. I went home and I called up everybody I knew. He made his first sign.
Lynn, he has learned now 2 signs.
Shantech's progress was hot news.
Sign. Sign. Food.
Now that's what he was doing, put his fingers in his mouth.
Very good. The food sign is made by taking your fingers to your mouth. And if we offer her some food again, see?
Uh-huh.
A day later, he made the drink sign. And then really within a few weeks, he had a solid core of about a dozen signs that he could make. He understood that these hand shapes meant things, and they gave him a power over his world. Orangutan baby at 7 months is, in many of its physical abilities, in advance of a human child. Orangutan babies can sign earlier than human babies because they have the muscle coordination to do it.
Just like a human learning from mom, Shantech's language bonded him ever closer to Lynn.
I did very much think of Shantech as my foster son. I wanted to always wear both hats, the mom hat and the science hat.
A baby orangutan is one of nature's clingiest infants.
They have the longest childhood of any species other than humans. So orangutan babies will stay with their mom until they're 8 or 9 years old.
I think at first it didn't quite sink into me, the responsibility that I was taking on.
Caring for Shantech was a relentless round of playing, feeding, and diaper changing. It was a busy routine, even with the help of a team of student volunteers.
I slept with him every single night, or one of the student assistants, for a couple of years.
How'd it go, Julie? Slept right through. Good.
Last night, not at all.
We would hope that he would get sleepy and kind of fall asleep, usually on our arms lying in the bed, and then we would slowly move the bed down to the bedroom. After a while, when he slept through, we knew that it would be safe to leave him alone.
Facing a conflict between work and home, Lynn sought out professional help. Anne Southcombe had recently left a job teaching sign language to gorillas.
When I first arrived, he was pretty easy as far as his likes, and he had a great life, you know. It was mostly play, 90% play.
Anne became Shantech's full-time carer and teacher. This is the first time she's been back to the campus in Chattanooga for over 20 years.
It's amazing that it's still here. I'm so glad to see it. He had a jungle gym right up there. If he went from this area to that area, a person would just walk down the stairs or walk down the hall, but he swung. He swung down. It's amazing. It's still, this part is just still the same.
Chantek, or Chan as he's known to his friends, celebrated his first birthday with all the trimmings. In case you're ever in the situation of having to buy gifts for a monkey, take note. Chantek received a doll and an extra small UTC t-shirt.
I think he totally enjoyed all of us being with him. He had a really nice family of caregivers, you know. I think he's felt very special because he had so much love in his life. Yeah.
From all of us here at TV9, we wish you a happy birthday, Chantek. That's our news this evening. Stay tuned next for ABC World News Tonight. We'll be back at 11.
People were kind of proud that we had this famous orangutan living here in Chattanooga. The students got very used to him being on campus. Chantek was like everybody else, just maybe a little hairier. And it was normal for us. We didn't think it was strange at all.
He grew up with the campus as a small animal, so he never really perceived himself as being a research animal. He thought of himself as a student. He went to classes. He had his own wardrobe. He was quite a dressy little chap. So he really did change the culture of the campus.
It was life-changing for other people, you know, just to see how human this little guy was. Just like a little kid. Everyone thought of him as a little kid. So we did the best we could to make his life happy. I don't think I knew how fortunate I was. To me, it was just like having a human child. I think that's what makes me sad now, is it what a special time that was.
My happiest memories of Chantek. Just holding him in my arms, wondering what his life would be like and who he really was.
"2 years since being fostered by humans, Chantek now saw himself as one of the family.
What fascinated me is when we asked Chantek who he was, he told us he was an orangutan person.
Chantek's presence on campus was a reminder of human evolution, a hotly debated subject in the southern state of Tennessee.
In some ways, it was a crazy idea to try to do this kind of project at a small southern university.
It was something that you would normally find at a Research One university. I think Dr. Miles and his research were many years ahead of her time. This was a very major undertaking.
Wary of local controversy, the college authorities kept a close watch on the project and its finances.
In the back of my mind, I knew there was kind of a ticking clock for the point at which a lot of the funding for scientific research began to dry up, and it became a more serious threat of how we could keep the project going.
Lynn's best tactic was to prove the scientific significance of Chantek's education. Like every college student, he'd need to sit his exams.
To prove he knew these signs, we had to take him from his environment into a room with one-way glass so people could watch him through the glass. And I had built him this mechanism to where he would sit in front of it. It was a box, and he'd see an object, and he'd have to sign what it was.
We began to see how interested he was in toys where he could assemble things together or take them apart, build things.
You could tell that he was really remarkable. He is studying everything around the environment.
We had research apparatus where some of his tasks involved using tools in a string of up to 22 sequences where he could ask for wire cutters to cut a wire, to get a key, to open a box, etc., 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 and then finally get some kind of treat or puzzle that he would like to play inside.
Chantek's natural ability was beyond any doubt. He passed, and his tenure on campus was extended.
I was just elated that they were actually doing sign language, and this animal is talking back, and he is following commands.
Chantek was testing age appropriate as if he were a human child.
He is a very perceptive animal. He watches everything, doors and locks, windows, all the above. If you go out of a door, he's watching how you got out, how you got in. So it's pretty remarkable.
At the start of 1983, Chantek had a solid vocabulary of 38 words. And he was writing his own dictionary, blending words he knew to create new names for objects around him.
He called ketchup tomato toothpaste because he didn't have a sign for ketchup, and he called the bottled water that he liked car water because I brought it in the trunk of my car.
As well as language, Chantek was getting to grips with human culture, like the everyday notion of work and getting paid.
When Chantek was little, he would do a task for a hug, or he'd do a task for a piece of candy. But as he got older and wiser, it was a hug, candy, ice cream, so we ended up paying him money.
Chantek was fascinated with money and the power that money brings. And so at first we used coins, and he could put these in candy or drink machines. And after a while, we were running out of money. And we thought, what looks like a silver dollar? And we got these metal washers. He got 5 of these. It was a student allowance. And then he was able to spend these through the day in various ways.
Money and how to get it in a human world came easily to Chantek.
I'd be playing with him out in his yard, and all of a sudden he'd come up and say, give me a drink. And I'd go, well, where's your money? And if he had money, he could pay for his drink. If he didn't have money, he would sign work. That meant he had to find some task to do.
That Chantek was very fastidious. He liked to clean up.
Like any kid, Chantek was taught to share, splitting his hard-earned treats with the campus wildlife.
I thought this is a great thing to have Chantek share his cracker with the squirrel. When the squirrel comes down and he gives it right to the squirrel, and the squirrel runs, and he keeps trying to follow that squirrel, and the squirrel kept running. And I was so mad at the squirrel because he wanted to share, but the squirrel didn't want it.
He very much had a play area in his yard, trees he could climb in, a bicycle. He had all the trappings of middle-class life.
Life on campus was good, but it was time for Chantek's lessons in being human to move up to another level.
I wanted Chantek to understand that there's a bigger world than just the little world he was living in day to day.
Saving up could buy Chantek his most prized treat, a trip to the drive-thru.
So the routine was he would sign right out, and so he'd take me by the hand and lead me to the gate. There was a parking lot full of cars, but he could lead me to my car. He knew what it looked like. So when he got to my car, then he'd sign key, and I'd give him the key, and he'd unlock it, open the door, and get in.
He understood red, yellow, and green and stop signs, and he knew the way. He'd make the go sign and point to the way that we had to go, and he would steer that way to a fast food place. Chantek loved cheeseburgers. He called them cheese meat breads. At first they were a little startled, but he was a regular. And so people would say, well, you know, what does he want today? And Chantek would say thank you and take the food, pay the money, and we'd be on our way.
Chantek had developed a taste for the world outside.
One of his favorite places was Dairy Queen. It wasn't very far from campus, so if he would sign ice cream and point where to turn the car, we'd end up at Dairy Queen in maybe 2 or 3 turns, but he knew how to get there.
Chantek loved orange sherbet or pistachio ice cream.
All the people at Dairy Queen knew that he'd have to give them the money. He was paid in little metal washers, and then we'd pay the people later.
Chantek wanted to explore, wanted to have adventures.
But by the mid-'80s, fashions were changing, and so were attitudes. In these litigious times, the old routine became a potential scandal.
I noticed a car kept following us, and then we got to Dairy Queen, and he got his ice cream, and the guy jumped out and took his picture. The next day, it was on the cover of the Chattanooga Times, and the university had a fit.
What had once seemed like harmless fun now became a liability.
In other Ape projects, there have been accidents, and there have been lawsuits.
Well, first it might be dangerous, which it wasn't. He was great in the car. But someone might be driving and see an orangutan and have a wreck, so he wasn't allowed to go for rides off campus anymore.
But these new rules didn't diminish the outside world's allure for Chantek.
He began to stack boxes or his toys along the fence, and we'd see him sitting on the other side, and we'd do a double take, like, how did he get there?
As confining Chantek became a priority, he'd now use the same ingenuity that was once encouraged to get a taste of forbidden freedom.
Ever since he was little, he would pick up anything I was working with. One time I was working in his yard, and he grabbed my wire cutters and almost cut my extension cord in two. I mean, he knew how to work almost any tool.
He knew that keys and locks were tools, and he learned very quickly what these things were and how they operated. Inside his house, one of the walls of his bedroom was chain link. And one morning we arrived, and there was a big hole, and someone had trashed the kitchen. And in fact, someone had tried to wash a camera with soap suds. What we figured out Chantek did is he had unwrapped the chain link, and then by morning he had wrapped it back so we weren't noticing that it was loose. And then he took it all out one night, and he just literally walked through a wall.
For the campus administration, Chantek's disregard for boundaries was a growing problem, which brought him to the attention of UTC's own police chief, Security Director Richard Brown.
The largest challenge I had was to keep him contained within the compound that he lived in. Chantek had a knack of getting out at night. He was so strong he could hop over the fence and off he would go. Imagine when most campus police officers get in the car and they start their tour of duty, they'll check things like flashlights and handcuffs and guns. My guys also had to check candy and a soft drink, because when he escaped, that's the only thing we could use to bribe him to get him to come back to the compound. We spent quite a bit of money putting low voltage electrical wire around his compound, thinking, aha, that'll solve it. He'll touch that and say, no, 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 I don't need to touch that. He is so smart, though. He took a stick and actually shorted out the wires. Boom, off he goes. So I'm telling my wife, you know, I'm in this cognitive battle with this orangutan, and I'm losing, by the way, because I'm continuing to spend money, and he is outsmarting us on every hand.
Orangutans seem to have an innate predisposition to manipulate things. They're highly intelligent, but they're also incredibly strong, especially in their upper body.
Chantek wouldn't be stopped. In his next escapade, he delivered a warning direct to the university's seat of power.
He became a great escape artist. And Lynn and I had been out to dinner, and we came home, and Chantek was not there. He unraveled the chain link, got out his window. He ended up in the chancellor's office.
Inside, Chantek ripped the phone from the wall and left a trail of destruction. Campus security, suspecting a break-in, were there in minutes.
The officers didn't know what was going on until they saw him coming out in a trail of potato chips leading right back to his home.
And the security found him, and we saw him holding his hand, walking around the building back to his little trailer.
Even though his act seemed harmless, could have injured himself or could have injured someone else.
The administration's failure to contain Chantek didn't go unnoticed around the campus.
There were a growing number of people who were unfamiliar with great apes and uneasy that a large animal would be roaming about on campus.
Really, he had the strength of about 6 adult males.
Some people were fascinated. Some people were a little fearful and uneasy.
I don't think they were as frightened as they should have been. It's not that he was mean, it's just that he could hurt somebody.
The challenge I had from the academic administration and from our legal team was, can you really contain the animal? Can you keep the research safe? But can you also keep the public safe as well?
Though far from full grown, Chantek was approaching adolescence and ready to flex his muscles.
Probably I shouldn't have been working with him from 6 to 7, because they're, you know, at their dominance age, what they would be doing with the adults is testing their dominance, and he did that with me. One time he grabbed my wrist with his hands and he started biting me. It was play, but, you know, it hurt. I had to just keep my demeanor that I was still dominant, even though I was scared inside.
Days later, Chantek would escape from his trailer again. For the last time.
Fully grown, incredibly strong, really smart animal that knows how to use tools. That's a risky proposition. There were some incidents there. I don't know if anybody will talk to you about them, but I do know some things happened.
I don't think I realized how extensively some people just wanted Chantek off campus, period.
If an animal is moving around in a social environment, there are other people that are strangers. There have been accidents.
He was just so dangerous at this age.
We're not as strong as orangutans. We can't defend ourselves.
At 3 p.m. on February 26th, Chantek reportedly attacked a female student on the steps of the library.
I was quite startled to read in the University Echo that the incident was reported as an attack.
The attack, confirmed by a university source, said that Chantek had jumped on a student, catching her unaware.
We know that apes have attacked human females. It's well documented. These apes were the ones that were raised in houses. And then they got too strong. And they're not afraid of people. That's where the trouble really begins.
It's not that it's impossible. We do know that some very unfortunate things can occur, but Chantek had never attacked anyone.
The student had no serious injuries, but the university authorities knew decisive action was needed.
It was the escape that I think was the final demise. I mean, that was about the third or fourth one where we had been struggling with trying to keep him in, and we just realized that we no longer could do it.
The project was stopped. That was unfortunate.
Chantek was to be sent away from the campus, back to the facility where he'd been born.
I got a call, I think it was a day or two later, from a university administrator, kind of letting me know that the decision had been made to call the Yerke Center and move him there.
Thinking about Chantek going back to Yerke's just broke my heart, and I just couldn't imagine him not having the life he had. He knew he was leaving.
My heart was really breaking. It's one of those things where if we just had one more week, one more month, one more day, maybe just one more moment.
Mark Gilliland, a photographer with the University Echo, captured Chantek's last moment on campus with a single picture.
I was at the Echo that day, and they said they'd taken Chantek. If you go up to the parking deck, you can probably get a pretty good angle of him. So I just got my camera, came straight up here and came to this corner. I saw the van and just waited for them to come out.
They gave a sedative to Chantek. As we came out of the yard, I felt the dead weight of his body as the medication was taking effect.
Oh, I just saw the two people carrying him out up under the arms. They simply put him gently into the van, closed the doors, and pulled away. It all happened in probably about 10 or 15 seconds. It was over that fast.
The next day, Mark's photo of Chantek's departure made front-page news.
I mean, can you imagine, you know, your whole world changed in an instant? I mean, he didn't get it. He didn't know why.
At the university's request, after 8 years on campus, Chantek was returned to Yerke's.
I don't think Yerke Center really wanted Chantek back. The best of the administrators understood they weren't prepared for an enculturated ape. Really, no one was.
He was used to such a wonderful life, and he was in a 5x5 cage.
And I had to explain to Chantek it wasn't Kansas anymore. Meaning Chantek's life had changed drastically. And I went every single day from Chattanooga to Atlanta to be with Chantek through his long quarantine period.
On the weekends, I would drive to Atlanta. It was like a 2-hour drive. And the first thing he said to me was, "Car ride out." I mean, how sad is that?
Chantek was deeply upset and ultimately went into depression, which is learned helplessness. He saw he could not get out of this really, really small box.
I would sit next to his cage, and, you know, he might reach out and grab my arm or something, just so he knew we were still connected in some way.
I would say, "How are you?" And he would say, "Hurt." And I would say, "Like, where?" Thinking it was some kind of injury. And he'd say, "Feelings." Initially, I was deeply grateful to the Yerke Center for providing Chantek in the first place. But in Chantek's return, I saw a new attitude.
Chantek's confinement was tightly controlled. For several years, Lynn was unable to visit. When she did, she barely recognized him.
It was in the early 1990s, and this hulking, struggling body came out of the enclosure and just slumped in front of me. It's horrible. It's heartbreaking. And I was really afraid for him that his depression would become so severe that he might not survive. It was the dark night of the soul. And I saw that his weight had ballooned to 500 pounds.
Now aged 20, Chantek had grown the fleshy cheek pads of a mature male orangutan.
I realized that my juvenile foster son was now an adult male. Chantek in sign language said, "Mother Lynn, get the car, go home."
Chantek had pleaded with Lynn in the signs she taught him, but she was powerless to help.
It was extremely difficult, and it made me really angry. And I knew now I had to find yet a new home for Chantek.
Finally, in 1997, Chantek would see his whole world drastically change. Shipped out of the primate center after 11 years, he was heading to a new address.
I felt like we were being rescued. It was a happy event and a happy day.
Zoo Atlanta is home to America's largest collection of orangutans. Chantek's move here was thanks to the zoo's new director, Terry Maple.
When I was running the zoo, we were in partnership with Yerkes because we were able to acquire gorillas and orangutans to live at the zoo in the expanded facilities we built here.
I wanted to see him right away. First thing that I saw was this metal door raised up, and underneath I saw this giant baseball mitt of a hand. He was nervous, he was shaking. He didn't know what was happening. He had been living at the Yerkes Center, and now he had just come over to whole new surroundings, really his fourth transition in life.
Lynn could continue her research, talking to Chantek.
The zoo seemed really excited. I was named Senior Research Fellow, and I thought, wow, this is great.
When I first started doing my research, people called orangutans orange fur rugs. Nobody thought they were as intelligent as African apes, chimpanzees, and gorillas, but I knew better. I want you to do, Simon says, stick out your tongue.
Reunited with his foster mom, Chantek could return to the games of his childhood. But life was now very different.
No principal zoo director would ever give permission for a person to go into that cage and work with that fully grown male orangutan. No matter who works with an ape to deliver them new skills, eventually the ape has to return to the ape world.
As he joined the orangutan colony there, Chantek looked over, and I just suddenly thought, I'm just taking for granted that he will recognize that that is his species. And I just said, well, who are they, or what are they, or what do you think? And Chantek looked, and he said, orange dogs.
16 years have gone by now. It's hard to believe. And Chantek has a wonderful life.
At 36 years old, Chantek lives in one of the zoo's small groups of orangutans, with a female called Nikki.
He's assimilated with his own kind really well. He's doing well.
You know, he's healthy. He's had a lot of really nice experiences here with different orangutans. You just know in your heart that that's how it's supposed to be.
Though settled at the zoo, Chantek's unique past is never far away.
It was funny when Chantek first came here, the hammocks kept falling apart. And we couldn't figure out what was happening. And every morning, Chantek would say hi, and he'd hand you this handful of washers. And we're like, oh, wait, he's doing it. But we figured out he wanted to buy stuff.
Hey, Chantek. Hey, Nikki. Some food? What would you like?
Chantek began to call the keepers a key man because they walk around with a bunch of keys on their belt.
What do you like, Shanny? You got some more? More what? More orange?
None of us are fluent in sign language. You'll just be hanging out with him, and he'll start signing and pointing, and you're like, what is he saying? And he won't quit. So you know there's definitely something that he's wanting. So you'll go over, and is this what you want? Is this it? And he's like, no, you know, and you can tell he gets like, oh my gosh, you people, can't you get it?
Since Chantek left Chattanooga, attitudes towards language studies with apes have changed, and Chantek's abilities are out of sync with modern science.
Lynn's work with Chantek came from a time when we were really interested in understanding how much of human nature was nature and genetics and how much of it was nurture in our experience, because all humans are raised by humans, orangutans are raised by orangutans, so we don't know, is it just that we have human parents that we become the way we are, or is it not? I think now we all have a better understanding of what an animal's natural life should be, and we're much more interested in focusing on giving them that experience. So the old types of studies really kind of violates those new ideals of how they should be raised and how they should live.
Lynn's work with Chantek couldn't continue.
One day I went with my card and it didn't work. And I went and discovered there was a new director, and he said he wasn't really in the business of grade 8 sign language, and that there would be less and less of the kind of thing that I did in the future.
This was a great, powerful loss for her because she invested so much in this guy.
I began visiting with Chantek in the public area to regain some involvement in Chantek's life.
Hey, hi.
And if Chantek were in one of the large enclosures at the zoo, I would just begin to sing the bedtime lullaby that I would sing for Chantek. It's the one that my mom sang for me.
Oh, my darling. Oh, my darling. Oh, my darling Chantek dear.
And Chantek always responded and would come over.
I love you, Chantek dear. He just said ice cream. He knows it's me. Yes, he just said Lynn. So he's asking me for ice cream.
It's 10 years since Chantek had an ice cream, or any of his old favorites.
Sign better. No, sign better. Your signs have gotten a little sloppy, Chantek. And you could make a sentence. Oh, I'm sorry.
He used to sign a lot of things that he got in the past, but we don't give him certain things, so a lot of signs have just kind of gone on the wayside for him.
Listen. Listen, what's that? Is that noise? Car. Yes. Chantek, water. Yes. Yes. Which? Water I bring in my car.
A life without Chantek's language and human cultural abilities as a part of his experience is not only scientifically sad, what a missed opportunity, but is unethical.
Maybe. I'll have to ask. I'll have to ask.
I could frame that question another way. Is it ethical to take that animal from the natural world into the human world? Should orangutans be driving cars, going to McDonald's, eating hamburgers? All the things that Shantech did. Was that ethical? I say it was acceptable.
More what? Meat. Key woman says no.
He does at certain times ask for food items at things that I think he was always given, and we just have to tell him no.
Shantech just signed cookie. I'm afraid that's forbidden as well. Yeah, I know. You're not too happy.
As Shantech's open requests have failed, he tries a more covert approach.
He's whispering meat.
These disguised signs are intended just for Lynn.
Shantech whispers by making small signs that he hides, the way that you might have a little signal at a party that it's time to go, but you make it very discreetly.
Shantech's abilities are still there to be probed. We ought to be clever enough to figure out how to communicate with him today and in the future, how to tap into his reservoir of knowledge, how to test him. I believe we could, I believe we can, and I believe we should.
You want...
Shantech has given me an opportunity to see how alive my universe is, and I'm eternally grateful. Yes, I love you.
He'll always be my #1 orang for sure, because I love him.
It was made possible in part by contributions to your PBS station from viewers like you. Thank you. To learn more about this program, visit pbs.org. My Wild Affair is available on DVD. To order, visit shoppbs.org or call 1-800-PLAY-PBS.